Hey, it's Louise Hvala and you're watching Gatehouse Insights. Today I'm joined by a very special guest, Mark Carrazzo, who is a business consultant, coach, lawyer and founder of Be Your Best Now. In this episode, Mark will be shedding some light on the topic of positive psychology, how it assists in personal improvement and lifestyle change, and what you can do about negative words and descriptions. Make sure you subscribe to the Gatehouse Legal Recruitment YouTube channel to catch it all. So Mark, I wanted to begin with what is positive psychology?
Well, positive psychology is a subfield of psychology which focuses on a range of positive things for human beings like happiness, positivity, optimism, well-being. But I suppose the best definition that I've seen talks about what makes a human being actually thrive or flourish. So it's not untested self-help. There is science behind it. Some say it's soft science, but I think the science and research that's been going on for about 4 decades now is good enough to quote and it's good enough to work on.
And how does positive psychology assist in lifestyle change and personal improvement development?
I think being in a positive mindset is a foundation to making change in your life or assisting someone else to make change. And I think one of the first tests of positive psychology that we can use is helping people to get small successes that build on that. So I think you should start with small, achievable goals. When people think that an outcome is within their control, they'll try harder for it. So that's the first one. The second one is to avoid negative descriptions. People are very good at being judgmental of themselves and not granting themselves compassion so that they can be hard on themselves and they cannot realise their potential. So watch out for negative descriptions. I think also it's very important to focus on an individual's strengths. We all have different strengths. That's the way we were made. So I think that's pretty important when you're trying to get people to change. And finally, I think it's critical to celebrate successes and to give praise and recognition. And there's some really good research on praise and recognition. They say that a manager who's got a particular bent towards praise and recognition will have a team that's 31% more productive than someone who doesn't, and that praise, when it's delivered effectively, properly delivered praise, can be actually more incentivising for somebody than money.
Just touching on the praise, how do you praise someone? What does that look like?
Well, I think some people think that praise is well done, way to go, that sort of thing. I think praise should be delivered properly. Let the person know you observed what they did, you're well aware of their efforts, so it's a bit more descriptive than that. Congratulations on what you achieved. I know you worked at this for a long time, you did this, you did that, and you've got the result. How do you feel? That's much better than a dismissive sort of form of praise, if you know what I mean, which can, in the end, not have the intent that you wanted at all.
Yeah. Well, you touch on negative words and descriptions. What do you mean by negative words, descriptions, and what can we do about them so we get ourselves out of that cycle of negative words and descriptions? Well,
I think we all, when we have a challenge in our lives or something which can be perceived as negative, we know that we have a negativity bias in us, and that's probably there for purposes of helping us to sustain and get through different issues in our life, but it can cause us a problem. And I suppose the first thing to do for yourself is to correct yourself when you're saying negative things that don't make sense, like, I'll never be able to do that. Oh, I can't do yoga because I'm not flexible. They're classic generalisations. Now the person working with you should identify that and politely correct you and say, no, it's not that you can't do that, it's because you haven't done it before, have you? So that's where a coach can be very handy in the behavioural change, in the personal improvement environment, Louise.
Yeah. From I suppose, an employer or a manager's point of view, how do they, I suppose, get their team out of that negative self-talk?
I think a lot starts with the leader and whether the leader's going through the process of praising and talking about positivities in the workplace. But there again, for me, working with teams, I think it's one small success after another. So if you can get the team to have a win somewhere, albeit small, they'll go on to the next particular challenge with self-belief, and that's where you start to get things moving. So to get off the ground, to get self-belief, let's just go very gently.
Is there evidence that positive mindset can actually make a difference?
Yeah, I think there's really good evidence out there. In fact, you probably could say that the body follows the mind. There's a researcher called Ali Langer, who's probably considered to some people the mother of the positive psychology movement. She took a group of 75-year-old men away on a retreat in 1979. She said, I want you to behave as if it was 1959. In other words, that you were 20 years younger. I want you to dress the way you did when you were 20 years younger. I want you to talk about the things that you spoke about when you were in your 50s. And generally, I don't want you to bring anything on this retreat that comes after 1959. Now, after that retreat, she found that their eyesight had improved. They showed greater flexibility, better posture, and randomly selected people that were asked to judge their age before, from photos, before and after the retreat, said on average they looked 3 years younger. So that to me is fairly strong evidence as to how our body actually follows our brain. Another research done by the same lady together with one of her students was they spoke to 2 different groups of hotel maids in America, and they said to one of them, the work you do every day is highly beneficial for your health. Now to the other group, they did not receive no such good news. They found that the group that started to believe that what they did was exercise, a couple of months later had lower cholesterol, had lowered their weight. So it's sometimes the way we see what we do can have a big impact in the output of it. So I think the evidence is very good. I think you can also look at things like placebo effect. If I gave you a certain tablet and said this will help you sleep tonight, in some cases that particular knowledge that you have, albeit not the actual tablet you think it is, can have the effect of about 50 to 60% of the actual drug. So we call it expectancy theory. We believe that the brain anticipates what's going to happen and the body follows.
Besides, I suppose, things that you've mentioned, are there any other elements from positive psychology that can assist in lifestyle improvement?
There's 2 that come to mind for me readily, I think, and one of them is relationships. And the experts in the field declare that relationships is an absolute pillar of well-being, that someone who has somebody that they can ring at 3 a.m. in the morning to tell them their problems is likely to live longer than someone who doesn't. And we understand from the research that social support groups work incredibly well for people going through trauma, and those people that are in a social support group have a much better and quicker chances of recovery. So relationships, very critical. Apart from the fact that they say, you know, a problem shared is a problem halved, it can also be practical advice like taking somebody to the doctor or just giving them information. So it's impossible to overstate the importance of relationships in our lives. And if you look at the extreme now, loneliness is becoming what some people consider to be a public health problem. So I think in the UK now there's a Minister for Loneliness trying to deal with specifically with this issue. So very high up there is connectedness. The second point I'd say is meaning in life, finding a purpose. It's not always obvious to us what our purpose is, and everyone's purpose will differ. But it's a great driver in our motivation and in what we do. And you know, for people that don't really think they've got one, which you can find yourself at times of your life, just do something simple. Start volunteering or try a kindness act. Stick to relationships. Keep yourself engaged, and meaning may very well appear for you in life. And as I say, it's a very strong motivator, and we've got evidence now that people that have meaning and purpose tend to live longer than those that don't.
Yeah. How did society get so lonely?
It's a good question. We're a very fragmented group at the moment. We've got, I think, young people leaving home a lot earlier. We've got more relationship separations happening. It's ironical and counterintuitive because a lot of people say, well, we're not. We've got Facebook and we've got other social media platforms. but they're not really a substitute for looking somebody in the eye, which is enormously powerful, to be in the presence of some other human being, to have discussion, to look at them in the eye. And I probably should mention to you that it's not just the social scientists that are getting on board now on these issues. The neuroscientists that can actually map the brain will find that while I'm looking in your eyes, our brains start to sync. So contact is very important, Louise.
How are important emotions in well-being and personal change?
Well, I love emotions. I think we've forgotten to talk about things that are just so beautiful in our lives, like serenity, awe, love, gratitude, pride, the things that really make us feel great. And the studies done on positive emotions show that when we're in a positive frame of mind, unlike being negative, our mind really opens up. Possibilities are abound in front of us. We take a much more generous perspective to the views of others, and we're obviously positive. So it's very important to practice positive emotions in your life. And when I say practice, take up something that makes you feel, not just that you like, but makes you feel great. It might be walking a beach or climbing a mountain. I think nature's really in there a lot. It could be catching up with a friend that makes you feel great. So positive emotions are critical. Some say out there that we need to have about 3 times more positive emotions every day to a negative to be happy. I don't totally subscribe to that evidence, but I do adhere to the position that we need a generous amount of positives to negatives to be happy human beings. And let's be realistic about this. In all of our lives, there's going to be negatives. If you're working and making $1, you're going to have times where you're put under a bit of pressure. It may not be pleasant to you. That's fine. Negative emotions can bring a benefit to us. It makes us sometimes focus, it makes us fear, sometimes makes us seek help. But realistically, we should be, at the end of the day, try and introduce positives to counteract those negatives that are just an everyday part of life. So they're very important.
Are there any emotions that are more important than other emotions?
Glad you asked that. It's very much a personal question, of course. 2 that come up on my radar a lot, if I'm looking at the evidence, is one is love. And what I mean by love, I don't mean love in the sense of that in a romantic sense, or that in a exclusive sense between 2 people, the way the movies might have us believe. I talk about micro moments of love that can be shared between 2 people anytime, that may work with each other, that may be long-time friends. It's characterised by mutual care and spending time together and a synchronicity of behaviour. So love is very important, and a lady called Barbara Fredrickson has done some terrific research here, and she's found that people that have more love in their life have a more constant heart rhythm, and their brain actually functions better. So things that I think are fairly obvious to us, positive psychology is now coming out and saying, hey, there's actually evidence to prove that. So such a wonderful emotion. Thing about love, it's not a singular emotion, it's a shared emotion. It's the only emotion which bounces between 2 people, does us a world of good, and that's proven. So I'd say love is critical, and the other one I rely and talk a lot about is gratitude. And the reason why I do is because the way human beings are made is we're ambitious, we keep wanting to get more, and as I said before, we do have a slight bent towards negativity, and when we get what we want, we tend to socially aspire for more and do comparisons. So we have, in a sense, have a factor against us all the time, which is trying to defeat happiness. Now, the clear cure for that, in my opinion, is to practice gratitude, is to turn the brain around from thinking of negatives to thinking of the great things in your life. And they can be the most mundane, simple things, like I was able to buy a coffee today, or I enjoyed my chat with the person on the train, and it can be the great things of your life. It could be the wonderful auntie you had, it could be the education you had. All of us have these things rained upon us, but the only way to keep it to the fore of our ground is to actually practice it every day. For For new beginners, I advocate starting with a gratitude journal. So write down 3 things every day you're thankful for. What this will do over time, even if you give up the formal gratitude journaling, is that your brain, rather than the neurons connecting between negatives, it'll connect between positives, so you'll have greater awareness of positives happening around you every day, from a plant in the room to the fact that you're heading off for a holiday, you know, in 2 or 3 months. So gratitude is absolutely essential in my view.
We agree with that. Gratitude. Every day we do team, obviously, meetings, like 5-10 minutes, and the first question we always start off is, what are you grateful for today? So, which is really good, and you see just everyone's face light up and think about, actually, what am I grateful for? And we've banned the weather because people were getting in the rhythm of, oh, I'm grateful for the weather, so that was been out, but it does have it sets their day up. It sets the day up.
Yeah. I'm very pleased to hear that.
Yeah.
I think it's essential, and it's been written for a long time that we should give thanks, and now I think we're seeing that it has a very strong mental health benefit for us.
Yeah. Now, before we wrap up, I want to just touch on if there's anything else that can assist us in making personal change, and what other benefits does positive, I suppose, psychology bring to us?
Well, I've spoken, I think, about the major things for change. I think I'd summarise it by small successes. Stay positive, practice self-compassion, don't beat yourself up, we're highly skilled at doing that. Relationships and meaning, I think, are the things that I'd rely on the most. In relation to the question of what other benefits does it bring, well, happiness and well-being brings benefits like better engagement in what you do every day, better productivity. They say you'll live longer, you'll have a better immune system, you'll have better friendships. So apart from the feel-good, there's a massive reward that you get from going down this track of finding well-being and happiness in your life. And it's something, I have to say this, it's something that you have to work on every day. It's like going to the gym. You can't say, I went to the gym 2 months ago, so I'm feeling fit. You've got to keep working on this to make this part of your daily routine and your life, but the rewards are there.
And that's it. Another episode of Gatehouse Insights draws to an end. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing this video with your friends. And if you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe to the Gatehouse Legal Recruitment YouTube channel, where you can see more.